Hey listeners and viewers, if you've been liking the show, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give me a like, or provide a comment on feedback. For the audience who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about BMB?
Yes, so BMB started 16 years ago. It used to be known as Baklawa Made Better. It used to be known as Bilal and Muhammad Ballout.
Okay.
And the way we started it, so me and my brother co-founded this. And today, fast forward, it's a food conglomerate with lots of recognizable FMCG brands under it, mainly in confectionery and healthy foods. So today we are the region's leading chocolate manufacturer, Mediterranean sweets, actually global Mediterranean sweets manufacturers, and healthy snacks and food manufacturers. Some of the brands you would know, like Frickin' Healthy.
Yeah.
So that's a 16-year journey. And we went from being known, a little more on that later, but from being known as Bilal and Muhammad Ballout to today, Baklawa Made Better.
Okay, amazing. And I think your cousins are part
My cousin joined us 3 years later. Today he is co-CEO and my partner in crime. Yes.
Okay, nice. It's not a natural path to go, I guess, to university, spend all that time studying, and then all of a sudden stumbling into starting a confectionery business. How did you end up co-founding?
So it's
Bilal
actually
and
very
Muhammad,
far from natural,
yeah.
but not surprisingly, most people don't end up working in what they studied.
Yeah.
My background is in math and finance. Graduated and got my first job with one of the big four, without naming names.
It was on the tip. It was on the tip of your tongue, you know.
And in the UK, I joined for one day.
Yeah.
And I quit.
The same day.
Same day quit. I met the partner there, and I realized that it was not for me. For many reasons, it was not for me. To the shock of my dad.
Yeah, I was about to ask you how Arab, father.
You know what it's like. He's like, "Allamtak, I taught you everything." Now he's like, "You're leaving this good job in the UK. What do you want to do?" I told him, "I don't know, but I'll be home soon." and I moved back here to the country I call home. And in the first few months, even at university, I would say I was always curious about different business prospects. Me and my friends would sit down and say, "Hey, we're in the north of the UK, in Newcastle. What about we open a shawarma shop or a Lebanese restaurant?" And all these ideas made me realize later on in life that I always had entrepreneurship. I think me and my brother took this from my dad. Growing up, seeing him. We had it in us, and when I moved back here, my dad's original business was a mahmasa, which is a roastery that sells coffee, nuts, and sweets. And he then moved on to the hospitality field and passed this on to a relative. And when I came, that business was struggling, and I thought, okay, let me spend the first few months helping him fix the business. But the business was already down under. I guess the biggest thank you has to go to a conversation I had with one of the suppliers. I hope they listen to this podcast someday because I was a 21-year-old kid, and I remember I was trying to negotiate. We had a cash flow problem, so I was trying to negotiate credit limits with the supplier, and he went on to, he told me, "Listen, you kid, you wasted my time. You brought me here. From now on, if you want anything, you pick it up from our warehouse and you pay in cash." So I went from 30 days to like cash. It was like, and when I tried to look for an alternative, there was none. And that's what then, and I called my dad up and I told him, I'll not forget that day. I was like, "Look, I know what I want to do." And he's like, "What is that?" I was like, "I'm going to open up a trading company to sell chocolate ingredients." He's like, "Now you went and did the masters in finance and math, and now you want to be a trader." I was like, "Yes." So that's how the journey started. My brother was studying in London at the time. My cousin was an engineer with Motorola. and I flew to Singapore. Basically, I found a company that had no representation in the UAE. They're based in Singapore. Flew there, and I remember I had to even borrow money for the ticket. I had no income, and I presented to them the opportunity of what it would look like if I had their brand. I remember they asked me what my age was, and you know how we love to. I was like 27, but I had sent them my passport copy to book my hotel. And I realized while I was telling them, and the CEO smiled. He's like, "Look, I like you, and I'll give you the contract, but you have to sign here that you're going to take in year one 100 tons. 100 tons at the time." To get things in perspective, it was $4 a kilo, so $400,000.
Yeah.
$400,000. I had none. I had zero in my bank account. It was quite a lot, but I was so excited that I signed it. And I was like, "We'll figure this out later." And I called my dad when I went back to the hotel, and I was like, "I got the contract." I can't say to you what he told me, but
but you told him I got the contract, or you just told him I got the contract?
No, I just told him I got the contract. He told me, "What did you sign on?" I told him, "Yeah, I signed." And he's like, "Yeah, but what's the quantity?" I was like, "I signed for $400,000." And then you can imagine. I was like, "Sean, what are you doing?" And he's like, "This is a legal contract." I was like, "Yeah, don't worry about it. We got this."
I got it.
And then and then there was a lot of screaming. But you know. I guess that's the protective dad for you.
Yeah.
Flew back, and now the business. I had to start the business because I told these guys I have warehouses and a fleet, and we had nothing.
Yeah. Just a couple of quick questions. So, for a 21-year-old, it seems that you just had a lot of courage or confidence, right? Like you're negotiating with suppliers, you're flying out to Singapore, telling these people, "Hey, listen, I'm 27, but I'm 21, and here's what I'm gonna do." How did you find that confidence?
The truth is, I don't know. I feel like the less you have in life, the less you have to lose. And when you're that young, I feel like there's this thing in you where it's like saying, I used to go play football, and if you see the way I used to play football, it was like I wasn't worried about breaking a leg or. And as you get older, you start becoming more conscious, and I feel that in the younger years of an entrepreneur, you risk more. You're more fearless. Let's put it that way. You only start putting your guards up as you grow. That's I'd say that's my 2 cents on it.
So now you have this 400K contract you need to fulfill.
Yes, but I need the money and I need the foundation. So, I came back, spoke to my dad, and he's like, "Look, I've been saving up for you and your brother, and I have 500,000 dirhams for you guys. I mean, education's on me, but he's like, at this point, he was moving back to Lebanon, and I said, okay, that's great, but I also need one more thing. I need an introduction to the bank manager, because back then, this is just before 2007, just before the crisis, and banks still believed in entrepreneurs, and that's how there was no raising money from VCs, and I went to meet the lady. I have to say it's a lot of thanks to her, because she was my startup capital. I gave her 500,000 as a collateral. She gave me $1 million, and $1 million dirhams was not a lot of money, but it was back at that time, it wasn't so bad. To put things in perspective, the first container of chocolate was 200,000. So I took a warehouse in Sharjah, a tiny warehouse, and I hired a gentleman who would be the accountant, driver, sales, you name it. He was an all-in-one. So me and him were like a two-man show. And so that's how BMB first started. I called it Bilal and Muhammad because the competition, or the company that had an argument with, they also had the brothers' names in the title. So I was like, okay, let me go down that path. And I called my brother up. He was studying. I was like, look, I'm setting up this company for us. It's going to be Bilal Muhammad Ballout, and we're going to be selling chocolate ingredients. And he's like, you know what? I'm so in. And he would go there, and then until he graduated, every break he had, he would come here and help me out. So that was the birth of BMB.
Yeah. How did you figure out that this is actually what I need to do in terms of becoming a trader consultant?
Simply by being different than the rest. You know, it's what is everyone else doing, and how could you offer something that much better? And as a start, I really believe no matter what industry you enter, you need to understand it. You don't have to have studied it. You don't have to come from that background. But you really, if you want to excel in it, you need to know, and I'll go on to tell you a little bit more when it comes to baklawa and so on, how by understanding the product really well, it made all the difference in one of the oldest products in our culture, really. So that's what drove me to go and start learning more about chocolate and turning into what we call a master chocolate chef.
So, I'm a huge fan of chocolate. Give me a piece of.
Don't ask me.
Give me a nugget that I can use at a dinner party about chocolate that most people don't know.
Okay. So if you want to know, let's say, in chocolate, there's something called compound chocolate, something called couverture chocolate. Okay. Difference is quite simple. One uses palm oil, one uses cocoa butter. But now you want to know the difference between the different types of couvertures. First, hold the chocolate in your hand. If the chocolate melts at your body temperature, okay, then as a start, now you have a chocolate that has cocoa butter inside. So you're holding a good quality chocolate. Okay. If it's not melting in your hand, something's wrong. Yeah. Okay, so this is as a start. When you put it in your mouth, now we're gonna go to another level. But that's like saying, give me a crash course in wine tasting. It's I think what I'll do is we'll do a chocolate tasting session together. You come over and then I'll
100%. So now you've become a master chocolate chef. What happened with that 400K stock? Were you able to push it out?
Yes. So we started, we sold out our first container, ordered our second one, started ordering decorations from China. I would go and from my competitor buy a chocolate machine, send it to China, disassemble it there, and then replicate it essentially and start selling it for a quarter of its price. And very quickly we made very good use. I have to say, when you're so constrained with capital, you'll do there's never going to be a second round then you'll start planning really well. You'll only sell either in cash or you keep your limits quite low. When you look at margins, you really want to make margins. You don't have enough capital to have the privilege of selling volume with low margins. So in the first 2 years of the business, we pretty much quadrupled our capital, I'd say.
It's amazing.
By trading, and yes. And I'd say by year 3, we realized that, look, the range we have in our trading division was increasing and the business was doing well. But the clients that we were appealing to were not growing as fast. In this part of the world, here's some interesting facts. Lebanon has 300 chocolate factories. The UAE at the time had 5.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, when you're 5 factories and everyone's lining up and they want to sell you, and you have so many options by this point, it becomes uninteresting. And the innovation within these factories was very limited, because it was all a very old mindset of, these are the products I have, take it or leave it. Whereas, and I'd say we were 10 years away from what Europe and the US were doing when it came to confectionery. Lebanon, the factories there were very innovative, but with all the turmoil that they had, they would always, the airport would shut down, freight would get blocked somehow, and they wouldn't be able to export to the GCC. One of the largest consumers are in Saudi, and suddenly you'd find that their supply was blocked off. So realized there was an opportunity here, and that's how we built our first chocolate factory. At this point, my brother graduated and moved back, so now we're 2 in command, and we split our roles really nicely, and we set up our first factory.
How'd you split the roles?
So at that point, I was doing everything supply chain, production, procurement, warehousing, logistics, and he was doing finance, HR, and sales. Yes, and I'd say that the game changer for us, all the production that we ended up doing, we had some rules. First, I personally think that chefs, I'm saying this on a
public platform.
Yes, but chefs are tricky. It's like hairdressers. Today you go to a hairdresser, you really like him, and then you realize he left. He left because he set up his own salon. He found someone to invest in him, and he took the customers of the first salon with him.
Yeah.
Chefs are pretty much the same. They'll leave you, set up their own factory or shop, and they take the know-how with them. So what we did was we did it differently. We were like, okay, all products have a recipe and a process. That's what we care about. So we started bringing a lot of unskilled labor and turning them into skilled labor, into chefs, if you would call it. And that's how our factories are like. We're able to scale up fast. We're not reliant on one particular person. Management is at a minimum, and processes and recipes are what dictate the game. Innovation is at the heart of it. So everything is about flexibility. I love the term mass customization. So when we set up our factory, it started very small. But today I would say it's one of the most flexible chocolate manufacturing facilities that you'd probably find in the region, and actually in the world. It's probably quite unique in terms of the range of machinery and the setup we have. Why? Because we live we've always lived at a time when people always want change. They want something new. You want to live with the trends, and if you're invested in massive industrial machinery that are not flexible and so on, there will always come an end point for them. Whereas with us, we could move and pivot quite quickly.
Yeah. You're saying all this stuff in a matter of a fact way, but the reality is probably along the way you learn through trial and error, so a couple of questions come to mind. I mean, so now you've increased the capital of the business, but now you are, I'd imagine, almost betting the whole company on building a factory now at this stage, no?
Yes, I'd say that, we definitely realized that the future of the business is going to be more about producing our own chocolate rather than selling ingredients. Did we learn the hard way? Yeah, as a start, you remember what I told you about, learning the business inside out, the intricate details in manufacturing. Now it's a whole different game. I was learning about ingredients, but when you take a look at all the world of machinery that exists, it's outstanding. And the way they produce in the East is completely different than the way they produce chocolate in the West. There were lots of tricks and secrets of the trade, I'd say, that you would only learn by traveling and talking to similar businesses abroad, and trying to pick the little detail of how they created these masterpieces and so on. And that helped us a lot. Traveling, exhibitions, etc. I'd say we became professionals when it came down to the manufacturing process, which helped us understand how to pick out the machinery that we had. Now, this would play out a lot for us when it came to Mediterranean sweets. In chocolate, it's a much more, it's an industry which is much more advanced. You can find machinery on the market. But I would move back a little bit to, let's start with when my brother came in. Because as I go through the story, there are certain things I want to highlight that brought us to where we are today. The first thing is family businesses, right? So my brother finishes, comes and joins. Family businesses, actually, forget family, partnerships are tricky. And it's so easy to meet a friend that you love or a family member and say, hey, we have this great idea. We're both smart. Let's do it. Yeah. And you just jump in. And, you don't talk about, even in a marriage, you don't talk about what happens if things go wrong. That's like, if you talk about it from the beginning, then you're like
dooming it.
Exactly. Yeah. But we were different. From the beginning, you asked me, what did you guys do? No, we split our roles really well. And we put a contract between us and we identified each one's incentives so as not to ever have to discuss these again. That was a really important step that would prove to be vital in when other investors came in the future. So that was a very important, I'd say, step in the ladder. And the other one was aligning vision. What did we want? We were like, okay, look, we want to build this region's most innovative chocolate business, but we want it to be flexible. Innovative, what did innovative mean for us? And based on that, everything else came. The choices in machinery, and the people we would hire, the processes we would put in, everything was based on the vision. And because we're very, and then the third one I'd say, before I move on to the story, is momentum. This from the day we started the business, what kept us going is momentum. We would not say, look, this trading business is doing well, let's pause here. No. There's an opportunity to open a factory. Let's do it. Let's not do it over the course of the next 2 years. Let's do it over the course of the next 2 months. And that continuous push by both of us, there was no relaxing at any point, got us to accelerate quite quickly. So these three things, in hindsight, we had them in common. And if we didn't have them in common, I'd say we were, from the beginning, we wouldn't have gotten to that place.
Yeah. On the momentum side, how do you balance chasing the opportunity while maintaining focus, right? Because there's only so many things you can do in a day, right?
Honestly, we didn't focus. We're like at that stage, we were just grab whatever. If you told me, hey, can you make some cheese? And if I saw there's a market for it, we'll do it. That advice came later on. With talking to some mentors, etc. They were like, I guess it's so normal. At that stage when you're a startup, you're not only trying to grow, but you want to make sure you have enough cash. And so if you have to sell, something under private label, it doesn't make sense, and you'll still do it. Focus came later on. It wasn't there, but momentum didn't have anything to do with focus. Momentum was, get things done. Let's not, we talked about it. Let's get things done.
Yeah.
With that mindset from day one.
Yeah, and it seems like you guys also had a massive hustler's attitude. Like there wasn't this idea of, you didn't dwell too long on how we're going to get it done, or the barriers and reasons why you can't get it done. You're like, let's go in this direction, Bilal, let's go.
Where does that come from? Some will argue it's a DNA thing. Some will argue it's you talk. There are so many schools of thought on it. I think it's. I think when you come from a place where you have no other option. Okay, so I told you we have very limited capital. If that doesn't work, gotta go get jobs. There's no. Then you hustle. Hustling. It's very rare you find someone who comes from a lot of money that hustles. But again, different schools of thought.
Yeah,
that's our viewpoint. Yeah. So we had to make it work. It's a hunger.
Yeah.
Where that hunger comes from, I don't know.
Yeah. Why in retrospect, when you look at it, why were you doing all of this?
Very good question. Why? Again, it was a hunger. It's I guess is to prove to ourselves we can. 2, because we yearn to be successful. And our definition of success at that time was growth. It continues to be, but at that time it was growth and passion. The business itself, to end up being a master chocolate chef and go into details of manufacturing and so on. It's not a business you enter. Again, it's not a trading business. It's a business that requires you to dive deep. And only, if you're not passionate about it, you cannot become a doctor and learn, how to become a surgeon and spend 15 years of your life learning if you're not passionate about it. So
100%.
Yeah.
But you didn't know you were passionate about it until you.
You never know.
So did you did you get into it and like you were like, holy shit, I'm passionate about this? Or did you want to succeed, so your desire to succeed also brought with it the passion in this space?
Like when I studied math,
Yeah.
the only reason I studied math was because I was really not good at any other subject, you know. So I didn't go to university studying it because, you know, that was my passion. But then I became passionate about it while I realized I really enjoy it. When I jumped into, I explained to you, the way the business started was from a discussion gone sour with a supplier. So I didn't realize I was passionate about chocolate. I love eating chocolate, but while into the business, going to the factory at 6 a.m., leaving at 10 p.m., I realized I was so excited. I was so excited about products we'd create. I'd speak to my brother, and he was so excited about, closing the deal of the day. And I felt like we found the passion while we're in the business. Call it lucky. Yeah. But sometimes you find it while you're in it. It's not something, it's very hard to say, this is my passion. Who says this is, my passion is to open a chocolate business, unless you watch Charlie and Chocolate Factory while you're a kid. Who says that's my passion before opening it? Very rarely.
Yeah. And that's kind of the point I was trying to figure out. I think there's a lot of noise or kind of schools of thought about do what you're passionate about. And so I see a lot of people lost in life trying to find the passion. And I think there's actually another school of thought, which is, if I want to strive for excellence, or I have that hunger and I find something that I enjoy, that hunger with the enjoyment will create the passion.
I agree with that. So first you need to have hunger, fire inside you. And then you go out there and then you start trying. So, I didn't realize I loved basketball until I played 6 different sports and got to basketball and said, I really enjoy this. I think it's this whole, work, find your passion has gotten people to get really lost and unhappy, because today, particularly today, 16 years later, I can tell you, I've never cried so much to sleep as the last 16 years. I didn't do that as much in my childhood. The stress factor that plays out, and today we're only talking about the really beautiful parts to it. Finding your passion is not, you go to a job, you have a few rough days and suddenly realize, no, this is not my passion. I see a lot of that today. No, it's, finding your passion is you take something and you make it work. If you have enough hunger, what drives you is less just that the business or the profession you're in, but more the goals that you want to achieve. If you don't have goals in your life, I think it'll be very hard to find your passion, no matter what you do, because you're kind of leaving it to the wind.
So there's quite a few things I want to touch on. Number one, it seems like you guys had a really good understanding of customers, and you listened very closely to what customers needed. The question I have is, sometimes customers don't say things outright, and it requires reading in between the lines to really understand what they intend to say. And sometimes customers are talking about a specific problem, and then it's on you to go figure out, okay, how am I going to solve this problem, even though they haven't specified that, hey, this is the need of the day. So reflecting on it, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs around how to listen to customers and use that as a way to innovate, create, and build?
Excellent. Look, first, our customers are not that vocal. Okay, they'll if you take a look at our industry in confectionery, they just tell you, give me something trendy. That's it. That's your brief. Give me something that sells. If it sells, we're happy. If it doesn't sell, it's not done well. So the brief you're getting is like someone telling you, like, this is a plot of land. I want a really cool house. That's about it. Really cool house. And now you have to go build a house. No, how many bedrooms, how many. Now, how did we listen to that, and how did we make something out of it? Honestly, by being able to change quick. We would try something out. We would not go excessive. We would not bet all our cards on it. So we wouldn't put all our money into one product or one line, and we're able, because of that, we're able to fail quick and jump and start up quick. And if we succeeded, we'd double down. You see what I mean? So for us, so
you guys were just willing to try.
We're willing to try. Till today, the industry, talks to us, and they're very perplexed by our school of thought, because if you take a look at research and development in a lot of food industries, products go under research for 3 years, 4 years before they're launched. And they asked, I remember we've recently had a conversation where they're like, how long does it take you from an idea? So me and you thought it could be sitting now, and you'd be like, Bilal, I have this really cool idea for you, freaking healthy. How about a kid snack that does the following? And from that idea to putting it on the shelves, for us, is a 3-month process. 3 months. Because, we really believe in back to the momentum. You've got it. Look, it's a matter of time before someone else thinks of this. So, as long as it goes through certain parameters and it's safe with all the shelf life studies and nutrition, etc. But as long as you go through all that, try. Try small. There are avenues. You don't have to list the product everywhere. Start somewhere. But I think a lot of times, time is what kills businesses. It just takes so long to change. And there's so much reluctance to move. This brings me to the third part of what we ended up doing. I was at a dinner, a networking dinner, and I remember one of the mentors there came and said, "Hey, what's the purpose of your business? You guys sell sugar. How are you? What drives you?" And he said this in front of a few people, and I told him, "Look, do you normally feel happy when you have chocolate?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "That's what we do. We're spreading happiness." But I went back home and I thought, he had a point. And it's normal that as a founder, you're always so protective about your initial value proposition that you'll defend it with all your might. Even if someone looks at you straight in the face and says, "Hey, that's no longer valid today," you'll still defend it, because if you don't stand for that, what do you stand for? See, that's thankfully something that the three of us never had. We sat together and we're like, look, we really gotta make some investments the other way around in the healthy food space, because that's where the world is moving. And and that's how we met. And it's a skill set we didn't have. Today, in confectionery, we understood it. We knew how to innovate quickly. But then when you talk healthy foods, now you're talking from a chef. Now we're talking about a nutritionist, a food scientist. And we had no one on board. And it was a whole industry we needed to invest in. So the best way to do it, the new age way of doing it, is we found the founder of Freaking Healthy. I remember meeting him, and he was looking for a supplier to produce his products. And that one conversation ended up in us saying, "Let us invest in you." And literally, that everything took about 1 week, and we became partners. And what we inherited with that is the whole skill set. And from there, we built on. So the idea is pivot, change. Visions change every single year for us. What you asked me at the beginning, how you define success? It's not the same anymore.
Yeah, that was my closing question. You jumped to it.
Yeah. It's not. It's never. Every single year we redefine ourselves. But at the end, whether we go right or we go left, or we're moving forward. You know what I mean? We're just keeping up with what the future would look like.
The other point that we kind of glossed over, but I think is important, is working with family. You mentioned the component of putting in contracts, putting in a structure. I love that. I think that makes a lot of sense. It takes the emotion out of doing business with family. I also think business and family together gets a bad rep. But if you can do it right, and this is kind of what I want to harp on, there's an advantage of working with family, assuming that the family you're working with is intelligent, hardworking, hungry, that you don't get working with others, which is just blind trust, right? And I find that you can't underestimate the value of that blind trust until you're in that space and you're working with family, and you feel like the person on the other side has your back unequivocally. And I think that goes a long way in taking off a lot of stress in starting a company.
I mean, you're saying that from experience, right? Because you work with your brother too. I think we're both lucky. Because I think we got dealt some, I mean, my brother, my cousin, I feel exactly that way around them. But I don't think that's a theory for everyone. You know, I've heard some really messy stories from families that you know, friends don't even deal you. So it's not, you know, what makes family businesses work or not, or any business work or not, it's not if they're your family or they're your best friend or they're your partner. It's more, this is, you know, it's all about incentives. You know, you being friends has completely different incentives than you setting up a partnership together, because in one sense your expectations of each other is something, and in the other sense now you're holding each other accountable to what you deem your success, how you define success is. And that has nothing to do with friendship. And if you're not incentivized in the right way, and if you don't split responsibilities in the right way, life will happen. And when life happens, it will deal you all the challenges that you can imagine. I guess everyone goes through that anyway in relationships, right? But it will deal you these things. And if you don't have a roadmap of how to deal with them, it unfortunately breaks even the best businesses. So nothing to do with family businesses. I think we were lucky that we had that extra trust. It's definitely, you want to partner with the right people, but partnerships are difficult, and we spend very little time initially defining the roles, and a lot of time cleaning up the mess later.
Yeah, fair point. The other thing, when you were talking about going into new product lines and then your cousin was opening new markets, I think it's very important to note that really when you think about your core business, I think what I've seen a lot of the most innovative companies do is, while they're in the core and they're scaling the core, they're thinking about, where do I get that next level of growth rate, right? Because the core, eventually the denominator becomes so big that the growth rate starts to come down. And you hit on two ways to do that. One is introducing new product lines that can scale quite rapidly, or in your case, moving to new markets.
In our case, there's also one extra. You remember the initial business where we were importing chocolate from Singapore, and then it turned to Spain. We end up opening our own factory to produce that chocolate here.
Okay.
So we completely vertically integrated, and that also allowed the business to further grow. So whether it's again vertically integrating, introducing new product lines, moving into a whole new segment, moving into new markets, there's ample ways that you keep growing. What's more important is to ask yourself, beyond your budget for next year, is what would the world look like? If me and you were having coffee now, and you're like, Bilal, let's start a business together. I'd say, okay, let's do that. What if me and you were having this coffee now here 5 years down the line, and we walked out of this coffee shop? What would the world look like? And let's talk about some real facts. For example, do you think that plant-based is something that will continue to increase? Do you think people are becoming more aware? That's a no-brainer. We'll definitely say yes, based on the trends today. It's fast growing. You think we'll live in in a world where sustainability, less plastics are used? We're starting to look at packaging that's more eco-friendly. The answer is yes. Do you think we'll live in a more, in a world where there are driverless cars, electric cars, etc.? And so we'll start writing the trends down. And from that, an idea will be born. And if you do the same within your business and say, well, what will our business look like in 5 years? Will people be eating our products? Will the demand be the same? And sometimes you won't like what you hear. And you'll say, no, but I'm sure by then we'll figure it out. And you don't pivot and change the year that it's too late. We for us, e-commerce was that. And until today, a lot of companies, the way they handle e-commerce is they think they'll hire one person, and that person will come in and change all their troubles about and just put them online, and that's it. Now you become a tech-friendly company. But it's not the way it's done. The founders or the managers at the top, all the way to the bottom, it has to be a mindset that look, e-commerce is no longer a cold e-commerce. It's a whole it's a whole platform that you have to embody from a commercial and an operational perspective, and so if the mindset isn't shifting, and if you're not ready to be honest with yourself on what it's going to look like, you end up missing the boat. That's so we were very good at asking ourselves that question not every year, every single month. Every month, every Friday, and we still do that today. And
the thing I like about that, you're not putting it in the context of the business, you're putting it in the context of the market and the consumer. How do you delineate between what's a trend and what's a fad? A trend that's here to stay versus something that this will pass? Because I think a lot of people have that whenever something new comes, they're like, this is going to pass.
You never know. I don't think you know. Some products that we thought it won't last longer than 2-3 months has been 10 years performing really well. And some products that we thought, look, this is going to be the future, fumbled. And again, it's about bet small and be ready to double down if it does well. But do it quick. Because you won't know unless you try, right? So, yeah.
Got it. The culmination of the story, what can you share about...
There's something I didn't say throughout all this journey. If you were to sit with me and tell me, hey, Bilal, the number one lesson you got from 16 years of doing business, I'll tell you, my favorite lesson is uncertainty. We all have uncertainty in our lives. And the more you get comfortable with it, the more likely you are to succeed. I'm not just talking about, your work life, but what I found is every day I thought everything is so perfect. The next day was a complete disaster. And every time I thought, I've already blocked in everything that could possibly go wrong. Something creeped up. And then there came a time, after you go through a certain number of blows, you grow thick skin, right? That's what they say. But you just learn to not get surprised when I love something my brother once told me. He's like, look, we're about to do a deal, and he's like, this year you're going to receive some curveballs. Some will be small, some will be big. He's like, but what you're going to do is dance. So as they hit you, you start dancing around them. And one came from behind my back. I didn't see it coming, and it really knocked us down. But that's it. The sooner you're okay with uncertainty, and I'm talking here about entrepreneurship for a moment, the sooner you're okay with uncertainty and you're okay with whatever happens, the faster you'll deal with it, the calmer your mindset will be when you're dealing with it. There's no panic that's involved. And it took that long to be okay with it. And today, again, when I sit with my partner, my cousin, and we sit and talk about, till today we have our struggles in the business. It's so normal. Nothing surprises us anymore. We're able to jump back that extra quick. And again, it's something that I wish I learned 16 years ago, because uncertainty used to keep me up at night, give me anxiety, and so on. So that's the 2 cents I would tell anyone, that look, uncertainty, it's there. You know, it's part of the. You're never gonna get it out of the window.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of Stoic philosophy to a large extent. You know, my brother got into the whole Stoic philosophy phase, and he said something to me that stuck with me as well. He said, nothing's ever as good as it seems, and nothing is ever as bad as it seems. Everything just is.
100%.
And for me personally, you're absolutely right. When I felt anxious about an outcome, I would freeze up in my mind. So I could see that my brain cells are freezing and panicking and anxiety. And as soon as I came to terms with this just is, all of a sudden my creative juices were flowing. And I went from this sucks, how did this happen, what's this going to do to the business, to this just is, how do we work around it? And that's a much more productive mindset to be in.
You know, it sounds so easy, right? I mean, anyone listening to this will say, "Oh man, this is very cheesy." You know, we get this advice all the time. But the reality is, you're not just an entrepreneur. You're a human being that one day you wake up and you're like, why is my knee not clicking? You know, what's going on? Why? And things happen to you, whether it's health, whether it's family, friends, and also on top of everything, work. And sometimes they all happen at the same time. There is no one I know who, has had a very successful journey, and you sit and talk to them and you get the one chapter in their life that how everything ended up really well and they made a lot of money, but you haven't gone through all the bruises that person has what caused them to keep standing back up? And really, it boils down to this. It's, look, it's going to happen. You know, and it's initially, when we were talking about what's your passion, and you can't, you can never take that out of the equation. And if you're okay with that, everything else is just, it's stuff that people already know. But that's the stuff not taught. You know what I mean? And and I think that's my.
What can you share about the exit, the acquisition, whatever you want to call it? I mean, that's
exciting.
Yeah.
So one of the initial mindsets we had from day one was, look, we're not building a. There are two reasons you build a business, right? No, we are.
Okay.
But we're not building. Yes, we didn't have we want to build it and then sell it. What is the future plans of the business? We don't know how far it'll grow, etc. So it was too early to talk about, what size we want to build, etc. But what we knew from day one is we're not building a business to pass on to our children. And as long as you're okay with that, what you start building is processes and the right corporate governance structure, which you could do if you want to pass it on to your children, if you want to keep it a family business. But since we knew that from day one, when my brother exited the business, it wasn't a hard ordeal because it was okay. It was a decision by one of the partners to exit, and he wanted to start up something new, and private equity came on board. So because the mindset was there, we were ready. So last year, and we always said, me and Mohammed, my partner, we're always like, when the right partner comes along, we will be ready to do a sale. But we want to when we say right partner, we mean someone who could take our company from X to 10X. Because at the end of the day, if you ask me, what are we responsible for? Sustainable businesses. We want to build something that lasts the test of the time, not just something that makes us money and that's it. And we owe it to the team and everyone who has a vision for the business. So it was really a blessing when the UAE's #1 food company started talking to us. That happened last year, and we closed the deal at the end of the year. And now we are still running the business for the next few years. And it's very exciting because now we're talking about a lot of new expansion plans and everything we always wanted in a partnership. So that's where we're at today.
Yeah. Does it feel different when you run a business and you've now had the financial outcome? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm guilty of this as well, sometimes I catch myself thinking, oh, when we get to that point and I have the money, life will be different, and I have to pull myself away from that thought because I know it's, planning fallacy to think that's the case.
Are you talking personally or are you talking for the business?
I guess both.
So look, again, it's a very individual. Some people are driven by monetary gains, and they see that if they have enough money, they want to buy that house and they want to do this, and nothing wrong with that. It's just never motivated me that much. I think financial security is a great place to be in. Anyone tells you money can't buy happiness, that's that's not a true term at all. Because as long as you're financially secure, that already buys you that comfort. However, what I found it's done for us is it's driven us because, yes, you take calculated risks when you come into the business, but as you grow older, you also have your own, personal responsibilities, right? And as long as you have to think of these while you're entering the business, you're that much more cautious. And at some point you want to incentivize yourself. When you take that variable out, and I think this is a very interesting point, not just for businesses, but for politicians and is it can't be self-gain what's incentivizing you if you want to really give the business your all. So what I found this year is when you took from me and my partner that variable out, we're that much more connected to the business with, the only stress, all decisions come just for the business. Nothing on the personal side, because no matter what you say, there's always decisions you're making for your personal gain. So that's one. Two, for the business itself, it's great. When you're part of a bigger company or when you do a round of and you raise money and so on, you know what it's like. You take away also from the business, you take the stress of living for another day if you're doing round funding. But for us, it just means that now we can grow inorganically as well. We can do some very interesting acquisitions and take the company to the size that we've always dreamed about. Look, overall though, the biggest pride doesn't come from the amount of money, or the biggest pride comes from, for someone to buy your business means they value what you've built. And there's no better certificate, no better award, no better than someone telling you, listen, I love what you've built. I want it. Particularly when, whoever that is it has a dream of taking your business and then building on top of it. So for us, that's the way we measured this deal, that success rate. And I get, every time I say with someone, I always get the whole, hey, how does it feel like, like you made all that money? And there's always jokes about that. And no, man, it's really, compared to other businesses, we live in a region, and particularly in the country, where we've seen a lot of success stories in the last few years. And the value of that success story isn't as important as, look, we've all built something that matters. That's what's driving me right now.
So I heard you say a couple of things that really stuck with me. One is, the less you have in life, the less you have to lose, and sometimes that's the engine for innovation. When you're constrained in capital, you manage the business well. I heard a lot about the importance of understanding the legal side of the business to get you out of, to help you avoid trouble. One thing I'm going to go back and implement, effective immediately in our business is this idea of what would the world look like in 5 years, and then working backwards to say, how does that impact my business? And I love this constant theme that you talked about around betting small, then doubling down when things work as a way to continue to grow the business. And we've been friends for some time, but this was an absolute pleasure. I'm so proud of what you guys have done. It's amazing to hear the story and see, 16 years later, that you still have the same fire pushing through the business. And so thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts on Talks with T.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. And I know we've been planning this for quite a long time, but yeah, you've made this very smooth, I have to say.
Thanks a lot, man.